Is there anything you want to say to all the boys out there?
No.
Not even like a shout out to your boys?
Oh, is this in the thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it
I.
is.
My boys, they know me. You know me. My boys, me, my dog, my brother, my boys.
So, there's three major points in my life that I remember, like, crying in the sense of, like weeping, like, not being able to stop it or control it. In all those instances, there's a part of my, like, processing in which I kind of, like, blame myself for not being able to withhold the just, like, uncontrollable sadness or, like, pain. And for the most part, that translates to me as weakness. And one of the things that I've been trying to work on is working against the idea that, like, because there's things that you can't control that affect you, that cause pain and harm, that's not a weakness.
I don't like this future. This is the wrong future.
Yeah, what is this future?
What?
It sounds like
I never like experienced like a chastisement to like not cry. My parents, you know, to their credit, they would just, if I was crying, they would just let me cry, which is strange. Like I see your reaction, like it's strange. They'd always tell me to sort of like, they just let me be. You know, sometimes they would tell me like, I need to like settle down right now. You need to like sort of get over this. But that was always more of like mentioning that like this crying is not important. Like what you're crying about is not that important. But they would never like illegitimize or like try to like just sort of like
The actual act of it.
the actual emotion I was feeling.
And I always think that by, like, making music, I'm making an avenue for myself where I can express this sort of shit that, like, I can't talk to anyone about in person because there's no one that I trust with that information.
I didn't cry a lot. I don't know. I've always sort of kept my emotions to myself. Not that I'm necessarily burying them per se. It's more rationalizing it and just being with it. Because I think even from like a young age, I understood that like what I feel is valid, but letting that affect sort of how you go about your day and going about your time, it's just sort of besides the point.
Emotional vulnerability was kind of, I mean, because my parents came from Poland, old school immigrant parents that are kind of against showing emotion. Like my dad grew up on a farm, not really the most progressive guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, coming from that, I kind of never showed that much emotion as a kid. But at the same time, my dad also was someone that kind of had value in emotion or saw value in emotion. So he wasn't like completely like this like hard Polish guy. Like he had a soft side to him. There's a way of staying strong, but also being able to show emotion at the same time, because it doesn't, you know, you can't be tough 100% of the time.
I just like, even now as an adult, I sort of think like, you know, your emotions, you can let them out, and that's good and that's great to release, but at the end of the day, it's you that has to deal with them and not other people. I try not to cry a lot, even if I like want to or feel like that, just because I don't want to be a burden to someone else.
So I don't really think about the times that I'm vulnerable a lot, because there's a lot of other things that I do feel like I have control over, and those things take up just as much time and are a lot easier to deal with from within, and then also how that looks to around you?
I think maybe the first time, like past like being a child, that I ever like bawled, like straight out sobbed, was when I was like 13, 14, and my dog died. I was in the car with my dad after we got. I had like been put in like a rec center, like on that day, because they like took him somewhere into the vet to like be put down. Even that morning, I knew it, and I was like apprehensive about it. And I guess just that whole entire day of just sort of thinking about it, like, oh, like my dog wasn't good this morning. You know, he was like trembling and all that. Yeah, my dad, told me like the dog had died, and I just sort of, I broke down. I didn't really know what to do. It's sort of, it's a lot.
When you grow up and your parents are poor and they give you so much and they sacrifice so much for you, and like my dad always told me, he's like, look, you don't want to work in a factory like me, like go chase this art thing if that's your thing. And it's cool that he let me do that, but at the same time you worry because you're like, yeah, maybe I can make it to where I'm getting by, but I don't want to just get by. I want to get by enough to give something back to them for all this that they gave up. I mean, moving to a different country, dropping everything, having your college degrees not mean shit, all for like letting your kid go like, yeah, I want to be a painter. Like that's fucking crazy. And for them to be like, yeah, all right, like it's tough. That makes me like worry a lot. Is like not really disappointing them, but not disappointing myself in what I can provide for them. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think about that a lot, and that gets me emotional.
And sort of going with your question, like what makes me cry and feel emotional as an adult is death. A lot. Like
Makes sense.
I went back home for summers, so I was with my family for like a long time, and then this summer I was living in Brooklyn. When I went back, I hadn't seen my parents in a long time. I just like turned 21. I was like a couple months into me 21, and I noticed how old they were. I noticed that like my parents were aging as I was aging, which like I guess doesn't really occur to you when you're at home, sort of with them. You're just sort of like, oh, I am this age, and I'm this age, and mom and dad are always mom and dad. They're going, and I'm going. My dad's had like a lot of health problems recently. He's fine, like he's fine, but he has a lot of like stomach pains, and like for a while he had like a lot of like migraines and stuff. And I don't know, like not that like I didn't know my dad could get sick or could like feel ill. Like I knew that. Like, you obviously as an adult you know that people, you feel it yourself, but like I don't know, just seeing him sort of go through that, it's tough.
As a black male, as a person of color, like a male of color, you have like these two faces. The one where like the one that you have to like walk around with. There's that sort of like inner facing personality where like you've seen everything that you've gone through, but there's no one to explain that to. The few people who like you could look up to in a certain respect are either inaccessible. There's not a lot of like pathways because the things that we've built around us have been like so hyper masculine and like just ignorant of the actual like pain part of things, like the hurting,
Well, I've been like I've always sort of like felt lonely, not necessarily that I don't know people, in terms of like actually physically being around people or like talking to people, texting to people. I don't really do that a lot. That's partly just me like being very private, but it's just sort of how that ends up. I've like been more off campus than I've ever been in like my college career.
Mm-hmm.
Like this summer I felt really, really lonely. Really, really lonely. Because I was, in Greenpoint, and I knew nobody. I knew like people at work, but that's a different kind of relationship than like a
Like a friend.
friend. Let's go do something and enjoy something. I've been thinking about that a lot. That's sort of like my biggest fear after graduation, even more so than like getting a job and like paying all that off. I mean, that's, debt and job, that's like the main big one. I don't know, I can find it hard to make friends sometimes, and that's been fine for a while, but it's not what I want anymore. I don't really want to be isolated as much.
Is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to share?
No, I don't know. Just that future versus whack.
So yeah, I mean that's sort of the main thing that I think about a lot.
Yeah.
Recently, just as I'm getting older, moving on to college, it's just they'll be gone. They'll be gone, and I'll be here. Actually, zoom in on that. Men cry.